Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. The Senate, through its Committee on Foreign Affairs, screened more ambassadorial nominees this past Thursday, granting many of them, including former Chairman, Independent National Electoral Commission, Mahmoud Yakubu, former Chief of Army Staff, Abdurrahman Dambazal, former Aviation Minister, Femi Fani-Kayode, and former Sole Administrator of Rivers State, Vice Admiral Ibok Hibas, the privilege of taking a bow and go. The only dramatic moment came during the screening of former presidential aide Reno Omokri between Senators Halim Dume and Adams Oshiomhole. Again, Arise correspondent Omar Bazwai reports.
After an initial age that saw many, including senators, ambassadorial nominees, and journalists scramble for space in the jam-packed hearing room 221, the screening exercise finally took place in a new venue. In rapid dispatch, the Senate Screening Committee attended to the ambassadorial nominees, granting Senator Ita Inan and all other former National Assembly members the privilege of taking a bow and go. The same gesture is extended to all former governors, Okezie Ikpeazu from Abia State and Ifeanyi Ugwuanyi of Enugu State, former Minister of Aviation Femi Fani-Kayode, and all former ministers, including former Chief of Army Staff Abdurrahman Dambazal, the immediate past Chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission Mahmoud Yakubu, and former Administrator of Rivers State Vice Admiral Ibok Hibas were also asked to take a bow and go. Senate Leader Opeyemi Bamidele, who monitored the exercise, offered a spirited explanation for the bow and go.
We also relied on the report, the security report from the DSS, from the police, and other relevant security agencies, and to the extent that we have a clean bill of record in respect of all of them.
My name is Fatima Florence Ajimobi, wife of late Senator Abiola Ajimobi from Oyo State.
All former First Ladies and former ambassadors were not left out in the offer from the Senate, as the list of nominees still waiting to be screened gradually narrowed down to former presidential aide Reno Omokri and 4 career ambassadors, but all eyes on Omokri.
My name is Reno Omokri. I was a special assistant
Omokri
to the president
had barely finished introducing himself when 2 senators, Ali Ndume and Adam Oshiomhole, snapped at each other over Omokri's nomination. While Ndume wanted Omokri dispersed quickly following a motion to that effect, Oshiomhole held on to the floor, insisting on saying a thing or two about the nominee, despite tacit pressures on him not to.
You cannot exercise power that you don't have. You don't exercise power that I want to thank you.
Finally, Omokri scaled the hurdle and was allowed to take a bow and go, with his dream of being a Nigerian ambassador intact. Omo Bazwai, Arise News.
We're now being joined here on the morning show by Senator Ayo Arishe, a former member of the National Assembly, to share his thoughts on a number of developments, including, but not exclusive, to the screening of President Tinubu's ambassadorial list and his handling of what many have called a very delicate period in Nigeria's history because of Nigeria's involvement with the attempted change of political order in Benin Republic and our response to allegations of incubating genocide against Christians by U.S. President Donald Trump. Good morning, distinguished Senator Arishe. Good to have you join us on the morning show today.
Good morning, Steve. Nice to be here, and thank you for inviting me again.
Thank you very much indeed. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. But let's talk about Nigeria. I mean, this is a subject matter that is of interest to you. But I think that we should start with the episode of Thursday, the screening of some of the ambassadors nominated by President Bola Tinubu at a time that people said that if it wasn't for Trump, if it wasn't for America, it was unlikely that maybe the president, will have released the list to have ambassadors sent out to various missions abroad. But then we have the list, a few controversies here and there about a few people who some Nigerians consider that they ought not to have been nominated or they ought not to have been cleared. But you saw what happened at the Senate where you used to be. I'm sure that somehow you'll be thinking, oh, it wasn't like this when we were there. So, and therefore, what are your thoughts, Senator Arishe, about the list in general and about what happened, the bow and go, the altercation between Senator Ndume and Senator Oshiomhole over, I believe, Reno Omokri's choice, who, as we can see, has now been cleared by Nigerian Senate to become an ambassador in Nigeria. What are your thoughts on all this?
Thank you very much. We have a new Senate, and the terms of reference differs from one Senate to the other. There are improvements. There are areas where you say, okay, this ought not to be. But in terms of the issue of bow and go, when I was there, that was reserved exclusively, almost exclusively for senators that have served in the hallowed chambers and who have been appointed to positions. Because of the experience they've had in the Senate and because of the fact that they were former colleagues, they have always been given the honor of bow and go. But now that this has been extended to maybe other public servants, it's the discretion of the Senate and the Senate President. But I think it might become a little bit challenging in the future to determine who is going to answer questions from the Senate in terms of their competence, not in terms of the political preferences. And usually, when you say screening, before a person can be dropped, particularly a nominee of the president, at least 2 of the 3 senators from such nominee state must have a negative report, and they must be opposed to the nominee. Otherwise, it's an exercise that should flow because the president of the National Assembly, particularly being the dominant party in the Senate, every nominee should have more or less, it's a formality that's assumed that this person will be cleared. And on the issue of Reno Omokri, I think because the president has nominated him, there is very little anybody can do to stop that, because I'm sure the president is very much aware of the little controversy about his position in the past, his position now, and my own take is that usually it's best to even ask 1 or 2 questions from nominees. For example, if there is any nominee that is not even able to speak very fluent English, I don't see any reason why such person should be considered to go and represent us in any of the Anglophone countries. You can take such a person to either Russia or China, wherever he's going to be learning a fresh language, and they can be permitted or excused for not being fluent in English language. So those opportunities have eluded the public, and we are just hoping that those that are going, and of course I know 1 or 2 or 3 that can, you can afford them on their dexterity and in terms of the skill for understanding of the English language. That is just on the lighter mode. But I would suggest that people should still be asked 1 or 2 questions. There are ways you can fast-track clearance. After answering 1 or 2 questions, you can say, let this nominee bow and go. Because that bow and go without questioning We don't know whether it might stand to hurt us in the future, but I think being reserved for previous senators that have sat in the Hollow Chambers actually gives an advantage and a lot of respect, for the colleagues and members who have served in the Senate. But this extension to cover everybody, there's no question that somebody who has been an administrator and maybe the president has adjudged him to be very good in his job, as I can go, and do the bow and go culture that was introduced into the Senate. And of course, most of these people have, they've had extensive careers in the public service and the other assignments that have been given. So if we begin to analyze one after the other, it will be very difficult to actually say, okay, we are not clearing you. So I think it's a formality, apart from the issue of not asking questions at all. That's my take on the clearing.
Yes, I think Nigerians will be troubled.
This way,
yes. Good morning, Senator. Now, I think Nigerians would be troubled to see the Senate screening as a mere formality. Of course, it's an important check and balance. And the bow and go culture does seem to mean that we have no way to check whether these people would be capable to negotiate our trade deals or bilateral relations or represent the country in a way that we can utilize to move Nigeria's interests forward. I understand, as a former senator, though, you want the bow and go to stay for former senators, but it seems that we've taken it to brand new places in the 10th Senate. And of course, it's not the same for everyone. The former ministerial nominee, former governor of Kaduna State, El-Rufai, was not given the opportunity to bow and go. So we've seen the Senate choose to not use that in the past. But let's move on to talking about Nigeria's positioning in general, because we are talking about Nigeria's positioning in the world stage. When you saw that the Senate had approved President Tinubu's request to allow boots on the ground in the Benin Republic, and of course that Nigeria had interceded on the Benin Republic's behalf to fight the coup plot, did you believe that that is a positive thing for Nigeria's position in Africa and as a whole?
Oh, yes, of course. I mean, the president has once again demonstrated his capacity and readiness for the job of being president of this country. There is no way the president would have sat down and be looking at a coup in his backyard, which is the Benin Republic. If that coup had succeeded without any challenge from Nigeria, then God knows who will be tempted to attempt such suicidal move, in our country. Even though it's not to justify what is happening in those mostly francophone countries with a sit-down permanent presidency and all that. But there is always a way, however imperfect it is, that democracy should always prevail. The president acted very swiftly. He acted like an elder statesman. He acted in the interest of Nigeria. And I believe I will continue to actually give him kudos for many of the actions that he has taken as president of this country. There are novel things that we are seeing, in our polity. Of course, there is nothing that is perfect to everybody. There will still be critics here and there, and there will still be questions here and there. And just like when the issue of Jonathan came up, and we had to come up with the doctrine of necessity, the Constitution does not address every issue in total. The fact that the president should seek approval from the National Assembly in the Constitution, we have seen a practical demonstration now that there is an urgent situation on the ground. What is the president supposed to do? He has taken the best action, and luckily there is that window again that you have maybe just about 7 days or a number of days for the president to present to the National Assembly or to the Senate that, yes, I have carried out this action in the best interest of Nigeria, and I think I'm now seeking approval. So some of these things could be, some people could raise questions, but when it comes to urgency of purpose and acting swiftly, I think the president has never shied away. And don't forget that he was in the National Assembly, he was a senator himself. So obviously, the people advising the president, particularly legally, on challenges like we have, and just like we had in Rivers State, where when bombs and pipelines were being blown up, he needed to act swiftly. And now that we have somebody trying to stage a coup in Benin Republic, he has acted very swiftly. And we give kudos to our military. They have demonstrated capacity. And I think other will-be or those intending to carry out such unpopular moves in other countries around us will begin to have a rethink. And left to the president when he first came in. And that Burkina Faso or Mali coup took place. If he had been in place for about maybe 6 months, the man would have acted and would have stopped those coups. So it's not in the interest of everybody. We patterned our constitution after the United States. And you know, from like 1961, when the Cuban Missile Crisis, came in, and Kennedy insisted that I had to block the Russian ships from supplying missiles, and building a complete in Cuba. And because America was thinking of their interest, so it's not an issue that is debatable. When you see a serious problem at your background, it's important that you act very swiftly, and the president has done extremely well. I'm very proud of Mr. President for many of the actions that he has taken, apart from this one. But this is a very commendable one, so to say.
All right, Senator Arishe, you said that you commend the president for the steps that he took in bringing normalcy and democracy back to Benin Republic. But a lot of people might say that how does this actually define the sort of international relations and diplomatic relationship that Nigeria has with other countries? First, particularly with other countries within the ECOWAS sub-region, and then to an extent with France and with the United States of America, given the interest of Donald Trump in the alleged genocide against Christians in Nigeria. But then if you look at it critically, what is happening in the ECOWAS sub-region is so critical that people are saying that shouldn't Nigeria question its relationship with France? You see now that a military aircraft of Nigeria with 11 officers of the Nigerian army are still being detained in Bobo-Dioulasso in Burkina Faso. It's almost a week now. So the question therefore will be, one, what sort of international diplomatic relationship do you think that President Tinubu and his government should pursue as it concerns ECOWAS, as it concerns France, and then maybe America? And then if you can put that with it, how much of confidence do you have in those, at least, that we know where they will go among the ambassadors? The first three that the president nominated with, intelligence background will go to America, to the US, to the UK, and to France. What sort of faith do you have in those individuals, those gentlemen, in representing Nigeria at this time that our international diplomatic relations is being questioned?
Thank you very much. Let me first address the issue of Burkina Faso. Our aircraft being seized and being detained, and the interest of France and the United States. I'm sure we have a very fantastic relationship with France, given the personal relationship that has existed between our president and the president of France. You note that more than any other country, the president has been visiting France, and that's because he's welcomed, it's like a second home to him, so to say, in terms of relationship. So I'm sure if it were a question of asking France to talk to the Burkina Faso people, they would have done that. But I'm looking at it from this perspective that, look, if you seize our aircraft, we have seen cases where people were detained in Uganda in the 70s, and the Israeli people just went there. We never forget about the Entebbe raid, and Israeli people freed their people and and subdued the people in Uganda. It's about time sometimes we start sending messages around here that if you mess with us, there will be consequences. And even though the new world order is for peace to reign everywhere, there's no country that goes into war that doesn't have consequences, both economic and otherwise. But when you look at a country like Burkina Faso, seizing our aircraft, I think there should be some little diplomacy of carrot and stick somewhere, that the president will have to start taking a second look at. But we do have, I understand we have security challenges in Nigeria, which the military is being deployed fully to,
Senator,
return normalcy. And
I'm trying to understand,
yes.
Are you calling for us to go into Burkina Faso forcefully to retrieve the Nigerian military personnel and plane?
Yes, that would have been my own preference, if not for the challenges that we're having locally in the country. That's what I was still adducing to. That we need our military to take care of domestic security for now. Otherwise, there is no other way to tell some of these countries that, look, we're not fooling around. And particularly once we have the support of the US and France. So it's only when those two countries, if they're saying no, then it might be a problem, because the crisis can now expand beyond what we initially anticipate. But if it's just for us to retrieve our aircraft and ensure that we free our people there, I don't see anything wrong with it. But, like I said, the president is at a vantage position to look at the security reports, to look at the pros and cons, and he has competent people to advise him on the best course of action. But if I were president, I might just look at that option,
At what point, Senator?
But I will still base it on the security report.
Senator, at what point would you think that will become necessary? It's almost a week gone now. If we do another 1 week, exactly. At what point would you think that such a tough decision will be required by the president?
If diplomatic efforts fail, like I'm sure the president can, or our foreign affairs department can speak to the necessary people in Burkina Faso. And if they are not yielding, or they are giving us terms that are totally unreasonable, I think within the next 2 weeks, or maximum 30 days, if there's a breakdown, we should move and do something, and tell these people that, as a matter of fact, once they see that Nigeria wants to move, I am sure the man that is their president there will have a rethink.
Yes.
Because this is not, these are our neighbors. So, and we should be friendly with our neighbors, but at the same time, we should let them know that you can't be messing with our country. Yes.
Definitely. Now let's move a little bit away from this talk about possibly going against the Burkina Faso sovereignty here. The Entebbe raid you mentioned, of course, is the very famous raid where Jonathan Netanyahu, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's brother, was killed, and that repercussions is one I think the world is still feeling today. So we never know where these things will end. But I want to ask very quickly. Is it a dereliction of duty by the Senate to not properly screen any single nominee so far?
I beg your pardon, I didn't get that question. Is it
a dereliction of their duty by the Senate to not properly screen a single nominee for ambassadorial position so far?
Well, there are two ways to look at that. It's either the president and the security agencies have done a good job of due diligence on the candidates, and the senators have read, their profiles and their CVs, their achievements and their contribution to national development. They might look at it that, okay, hey, what do we really want to ask from these people? But I will be opposed to that because we keep on learning every day. There are people that have come to the Senate in the past, and questions were asked from them, and they were able to express themselves and volunteer information that many people in the Senate probably didn't know. And it's a learning process. Because that you're a senator does not mean that you know everything, that you're a security man or military man or whatever. So the opportunity for engagement, for information, for people discussing their professions, educating the senators at large is a plus. And that's the more reason why I would imagine that they should not jettison the idea of people coming in to actually show their onion once they're invited to the Senate for clearing. It's not an examination whereby you say you have passed, you have failed, but you are able to tell us your level of competence, and you're able to, and the Senate in turn will be able to determine, should we just clear this man or refer him more to the committee, of the whole or whatever. So there is no, there's no yes or no answer to the fact that is it the dereliction of duty. No, it's like I said, different. It's a different era, and that is the method they have chosen to approach. I mean to use. But listening now to the benefit of the doubt, like some of us, we will recommend that people, as they ask questions, let them justify that nomination from Mr. President. Obviously, the president cannot know everybody one-on-one. He's just going to rely on security report and reference from his advisors or people that work around him. So that opportunity will be there for people to speak up and learn more about the personality that is going to different countries.
To represent
Nigeria. That would be my own suggestion.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
All right, Senator Ayuarishe, so many takeaways from Mr. President, on the people that he has nominated, and particularly on what is happening in Burkina Faso and Benin Republic. Diplomacy first, before the commander-in-chief, dimensions the situation. We want to thank you for joining us on the morning show today. Thank you indeed.